Much of the focus is still on national carrier South African Airways. Former General Manager of Human Capital, Mathulwane Emily Mpshe, will take the stand today. So far, evidence has implicated former SAA chairperson Dudu Myeni, and the ENCA's Erin Bates is following this story, and she joins me in studio. Good morning to you, Erin. Very unusual for us to talk face to face. You usually in Parktown. Talk to us about last week, perhaps. So Dudu Myeni making her intentions clear that she wants to cross-examine someone. Who is it exactly that she wants to cross-examine about the evidence that's implicated her?
Yes, you're right. So Dudu Myeni, through her lawyers, has sent a letter to the inquiry expressing her intention to apply to cross-examine. She hasn't yet, through counsel, actually made that application, but there are two people she intends to cross-examine. The one is Friday's last witness of the day, which was Dr. Masimba Dawa. He's the former Chief Procurement Officer of SAA, and he named her several times in his evidence, which went into the early evening. The other person is today's witness, Mathulwane Emily Mpshe, who's the former General Manager of Human Resources at the national carrier. What to me is interesting is that we haven't heard any interest from Dudu Myeni in cross-examining the witnesses from the Bosasa leg of evidence at the state capture inquiry. Of course, that's when we heard allegations that she, in her capacity as a member of the board of the Jacob Zuma Foundation, received allegedly cash bribes, 300,000 rand per month, goes the allegation of Angelo Agriti. And of course, that luxury handbag, he says his wife advised he and Gavin Watson should get for Dudu Myeni. She, of course, has told ENCA before. She spoke to our colleague Sipamandla Goge. She's worked in business. She won't balk really at 300,000 rand. It's not a lot to her. And no one can buy her, is the other thing she said on ENCA. In effect, I'm paraphrasing. And
we remember those statements very clearly from the former SAA chairperson. So what is it exactly about Mathulwane Mpshe that she wants to pick a bone with her over?
Well, we'll have to see what comes from Mpshe today, but what we do know from the evidence of Cynthia Stimple, who testified, I think it's about 2 weeks ago now, Stimple said that there were problems in terms of how people were hired and fired at SAA. We also heard from another witness allegations that a certain Masocha Mngadi, who was working at Nedbank, was, quote, Dudu's person, and that he should be brought on as an advisor to Dudu Myeni at SAA. That's the same Mngadi who was allegedly working with BNP Capital to try and get lucrative work at SAA. So he had fingers in different pies. He was working at Nedbank. He was also very close, it seems, to Dudu Myeni, and then he was talking to BNP Capital. So I imagine, and this is only a hunch, that what we might hear from Mpshe is stuff around Mngadi and also around some of the other potential employment contracts at SAA at the time of Myeni's sort of tenure.
Just as we wrap up, Erin, an interesting story coming up, I think, in fact, it was in this studio on Friday that some of these concerns were raised during Newsnight, Vuyo's show. And this organization called NADEL, it's a lawyers' organization, saying that the state capture inquiry appears to be targeting black professionals. Has the Commission said anything in response to these claims?
Not to my knowledge. The last communication we had from the communications team at the inquiry was regarding today's witness, set to testify from 10 o'clock. And beyond that, no commentary that I'm aware of as yet. Perhaps the chair will make remarks when we begin today.
Yeah, and just finally, therefore, lots being spoken about Nedbank. The name Nedbank seems to be coming up quite vociferously at that commission. Talk to us about what this bank is saying. Are they concerned about their name being bandied about so much at that commission? It's one of the big four banks.
Certainly. I mean, when we were looking at Transnet evidence, for example, there were allegations that Nedbank unduly benefited from a change in the interest rates on certain billion-rand loans that Transnet was seeking to acquire locomotives. At that stage, I did approach them, and they provided us with some commentary, denying any wrongdoing, denying any malfeasance on the part of Nedbank, and really, sort of shunting that responsibility elsewhere. In terms of what we've heard about Masocha Mngadi, I must confess I haven't proactively directly contacted Nedbank. So perhaps it's not fair. They could perhaps, issue a statement without question, but they haven't in this case, and we haven't approached them. But I do understand that once the details of Mngadi's employment were released publicly, that he was let go from Nedbank. So they cut their ties with him as an employee at that bank when all of this controversy over SAA emerged. Of course, the issue there is that Mngadi was both working at Nedbank, which was bidding for some of this contract work with SAA. At the same time, he was nudging BNP Capital forward, or nudging is putting it quite gently, Xoli. He was actually drafting documents on the BNP Capital letterhead with the CEO's electronic signature already on it. So he was really pulling all the strings behind the scenes. Once that all came out into the public through press reports, as far as I understand it, Nedbank did let him go. But certainly lots of questions about the banking sector. Daniel Mahlangu, the actual CEO and sole director of BNP Capital, claiming that certain people, including Cynthia Stimple at SAA, wanted to keep the banks cozy with SAA and were shunting smaller black-owned companies such as his. His is a fully owned black company working in the financial space, and his grievances at the end very clear from an almost tirade that he gave that the likes of Cynthia Stimple on his allegations are keeping the banks close to SAA but not wanting people like him and their companies to be let in. Of course, the problem is there's a lot of evidence that his company was breaking the law and that he was allowing Mngadi to use BNP Capital as a front. But yes, the banks have come up in a very stark light at the state capture inquiry.
We know what they usually raise as a concern, to say reputational risk is something that worries them greatly. So it'll be interesting to see how Nedbank responds to all of this. Thank you very much as we let you go to do your daily grind at